Hey, welcome to the Marriage 360 podcast, a full circle look at life, love, and marriage. My name is Marty Sloan, and this is my lovely bride,
Becky Sloan.
Becky Sloan. And our topic today is relationships, same-sex and opposite-sex relationships outside the marriage. Mm-hmm. So we have both seen this as observations in our own workplaces and environments. I've seen it in the church life. Sometimes a relationship outside the marriage can be a hindrance to the marriage. And it's important that couples maintain healthy boundaries with outside relationships. Let's unpack that for a thought today and kind of discuss how we approach these things as a couple and help other people find a good pathway to this in their own life and marriage. So, thoughts?
So I work in an environment in the medical community, specifically, where, you'll hear the terms work wife, work husband. Mm-hmm. And there's other places I'm sure that's talked about as well. Usually, these are people that work long shifts together, maybe on a consistent schedule. I'm not saying that those terms mean that there's something going on. But when I hear those terms, I think, okay, those are people that may be, connected on a friendship basis, but maybe connected emotionally, to one another because of proximity in work. And it's thrown around as, something funny, and it can be at times, but I think those are things that you have to watch. When you're talking about work wife, work husband versus your own spouses, you just got to make sure that the connection there is very just surface work related only and doesn't go deeper than that. Yeah,
well, boundaries keep wrong things out and keep right things in.
Sure.
And the one thing no one ever knows is somebody else's intentions or response to things they may say or do. Mm-hmm. And so a casual pat on the shoulder may be a casual pat for one person. Somebody else is like, hey, did they make a move toward me?
Right.
Are they opening the door of invitation for another response from me on in the same context? And so I've seen it a lot in the church world. As a pastor, I don't meet with females by myself. Mm-hmm. Our offices here at the church all have windows in them. I have a lot of female staff that work for me. We never have long meetings.
Right. You keep the doors open too,
Doors
right?
are open. Yep. Never long meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Individual, just me and another female. We have very clear boundaries of conversation, content, and we keep it very encouraging and very kind. And certainly I inquire about how families are doing, how's your husband doing, how's your kids, those kind of things very softly, but we don't discuss personal stuff. Right. We don't discuss things like that at all. Right. We're very purposeful in our intentions, in our conversations. And I think it's important in a space like a job that you have clear set boundaries because you will have things that maybe bond you together by default. Sure. Shared experiences, shared tensions, shared pressures, shared employment concerns. In the healthcare world, there's the shared care for a patient.
Right.
And you can bond over caring for somebody else before you know it. So any thoughts that you would bring to the table on how to have clear boundaries in relationships outside the marriage, opposite sex and even same-sex relationships outside the marriage?
So one thing you just mentioned a minute ago is about, when you are practicing social etiquette and you're asking people about their family, your generalized questions. Right. How's your family? How's your kids? If you sense, I think boundaries, if you sense that someone's having issue with a spouse, I think you have to be careful there, being that ear to listen or shoulder to cry on. I think keeping those conversations at just a very while I'm thinking of you and moving on, as opposed to letting it go deeper, because that's when that emotional connection can start. And like you said a minute ago, it may not be the person's intent, and then the other person may not even know what the person's going through in their home life. But I would say, keeping conversations to a minimum, and then time. And that when you talk about best friends, whether husband and wife or like same-sex, just girlfriend, boyfriend, like I'm going out with my girlfriends, we're going to go shop, hang out. I think time is of importance. So spending time with people is great. If you're spending time more with your friends than you are with your spouse, then that can become an issue.
Right.
So I think a healthy boundary is making sure that your conversations are what they should be, generally, and then time.
Yeah. Touch, handshakes,
sure.
Hugs, side hugs, the church.
Well, since
side
COVID,
hug.
it's all about a fist bump.
A fist bump.
Yeah.
So I've seen couples who are way too touchy with other people who they're not married to.
Yeah, and that's a personality thing, I think, sometimes, because there are differences in, let's say, how maybe you were raised in your home versus how I was raised. We were huggers, patters, that sort of thing. You had a different raising. You guys there wasn't much physical touch as far as hugging and that sort of thing. So I don't want people to feel villainized if they tend to be somebody that has that sort of personality. It's like, hey, buddy, how you doing? And a pat. But I still, there again, just because it's in our personality, does that mean that it's something we should act upon all the time or just, put it out there loud and large? I don't think so. I think you have to stick with what even almost feels uncomfortable to you. I'm not being friendly enough, because then I think you're safe. Because if you're going above and beyond that, that's when it might be too much. Yeah. So if I want to come in and give you a hug, maybe I come in and just give you a handshake or a fist pump and leave it at that, especially opposite sex.
Yeah, and I think we're also saying that when you're a married person, there are certain things that now become exclusive to your marital spouse. And they may not have been wrong before, but now they're not okay.
Yeah.
Even talking to people you don't know, opposite sex. I do travels. I do things away from you. I don't linger in dialogue with other females. I'm not saying I wouldn't be. I mean, I'm not rude to people, but I'm not going to sit and have a dialogue with a female I don't know. I'm a married man.
Well, example, I'm sorry to interrupt, but example is, I just thought of this in church yesterday. You talked about being in an airport and seeing a young lady crying and feeling like something was impressive upon your heart to stop and ask her, are you okay? That is the human touch. That's what would Jesus do in a situation like that. So, I mean, there are times when you have to do that. One thing I love about you, if that ever comes up or a situation comes up where you've interacted with a female, when you get in town or even that night on the phone, it's the first thing you tell me or you text it. Yeah. Like, hey, this just happened. It's like, okay, that's really neat. It's like, I got to tell you.
You're my covering. And
so
so
for sure.
I think people that want to hide things create space for the enemy to come into your own spirit. I've never met a human yet that wasn't a human and wasn't flesh and blood and capable of committing sin. And so I think it's important that we really see our spouses not as limits, but as protectors of our own hearts and our own souls against our very own worst nature. And everybody, no matter how sanctified they may be in Christ, there's an enemy out there, an adversary who's trying to bring all of us down in a downfall somewhere. And our spouse is actually a protection from those things. Right. And so if you use the phrase, I can't because I'm married, you're missing the point of being married.
Right.
I choose not to because I've chose this other relationship. Right. And so I think when it comes to talking, time, touch, those kinds of things, once you say I do, a lot of things shift into the arena of this is for this person only. And it may not have been bad before. It may not have been bad. For example, if you're a single person and you're watching this podcast and you talk to people of the opposite sex, that's probably well okay. You can do things that I wouldn't be able to do as a married man, bottom line. And the same for you as a married woman.
But that person would also be thinking, too, if they're single and talking to a married person, it's like at one point in your life, if that's what you want to be married and you'll be married, how would you want people interacting with your spouse 100%. Too? And you have to think that big picture. Like, does this make someone else uncomfortable? Would I feel comfortable if somebody was talking to my husband in a break room, closed doors, and starting to talk about maybe inappropriate humor or things, personal things that happen? And you just have to start, it's a part of thinking outside of ourselves and about others that in our human nature, sometimes we just are like, it's a task because we're self-centered. We're focused on me, and that's part of our sin nature. So we have to work on that. You talked a minute ago about. I was thinking when you were talking a second ago about the love tank. If you spread all your emotions, whether it be or time, touch. What you were saying a minute ago, sorry. If you're spreading that around, what do you have saved for your spouse?
What are you reserving?
What are you reserving to give to your spouse? If you get home and you're drained and you're spent and you've interacted with people all day long, you just have to watch that sort of thing. And that comes over time. Yeah. I mean, it comes over time for sure.
Well, I think the benefit of married life is, number one, God gave us this relationship to express ourselves emotionally, physically, socially, our touch, our sensories are always engaged in marriage. It's a free flowing place for engaging our senses. And I encourage couples to focus on that. If you have to go outside the marriage for that affirmation, for that conversation, then you probably ought to go back to the marriage and say, listen, there's something I'm needing that's not happening in this relationship.
Exactly. Communicate.
And I think you communicate that to your spouse and you get clarity on, hey, this is something I have a need for, because you don't want to set yourself up to being vulnerable to the enemy. And so I encourage every person watching this podcast or listening to this podcast today to really assess your outside marital relationships. The flip side of it is they can be very healthy to the marriage.
Oh, sure.
You and I are blessed with couples that we engage life with. And we have found tremendous benefit to our marriage from those married couples in a relationship context. We've been very blessed by that.
Spending time with your friends and others can actually make you miss your spouse too and want you to draw closer to your spouse. So I definitely agree. It's a good thing for people to have healthy time with others.
Yeah.
It's just how you spend that time.
Don't have any relationship outside your marriage that is negative towards your marriage.
Right.
If I've got friends who are marriage haters or don't love my wife or care for my wife, they're not my friends.
Yeah.
It's a quick get out of here conversation. So make sure all your relationships support the marriage, support the two of you being married, and have a very pro-marriage mindset about them.
Yes, that I would say a good example is that, we've been married 30 years. You've been in ministry almost the whole time, 29 years. And I would say, I think we've portrayed a positive marriage, because as a pastor's wife, sometimes people want to come to you and complain, even knowing, hey, the pastor's your husband. But I've had very little of that over the years. And I feel like, in a way, it's because they see the respect that you and I have for one another, but I don't think that people get the sense that I'm going to play into that. Yeah. There's no need to complain to her about him, because it's going to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be.
As it should be. Well, this is a wrap on this episode of the podcast. So we encourage couples to have healthy, life-giving, pro-marriage, pro-God-centered relationships that encourage the marriage to be better. And keep your boundaries up, and no such thing as a work wife or work husband unless it's the actual work husband or work wife.
Right.
Then you could have a work wife. This is my podcast wife right here today on the episode. Hey, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. We'll see you next time. I love doing life with you.
And I love doing life with you.
There you go.